Welcome to Advisor Talk with Frank LaRosa. Brought to you by Elite Consulting Partners, it's the only podcast offering unfiltered guidance and direct advice for all things concerning financial advisors, RIAs, and the practitioners in the wealth management business. Learn more and subscribe today at eliteconsultingpartners.com/podcast. And now, here's your host, Frank LaRosa.
Welcome to Advisor Talk Live. I am Frank LaRosa, the host of Advisor Talk, and I am joined by a longtime friend. We've been friends for a long time, probably 20 years at some point, right? Yeah,
absolutely.
Something like that.
It goes back to when you were in Alexandria, Virginia with Smith Barney.
Yeah, so 21 years, right? Yeah. Jeff Gonyo, who's the head of wealth management at Steward Partners, and Frank McDonnell, who is the chief product officer at Steward Partners, which is going to be a really interesting conversation. Some of the things that we've learned today when they were speaking to my team about some of the improvements and changes that they're making at Steward Partners were really interesting. Some things I didn't even know, which was awesome. So why don't we just get started? So Jeff, why don't you just briefly, for those that don't know, a little bit of your background and when you came to Steward Partners, and then maybe Frank, you give a little bit of your background, and then we'll go from there.
Sounds good. Well, thanks again for having us. We're delighted to be here and looking forward to the conversation. So my name's Jeff Gonyo. I'm head of wealth management at Steward Partners. I've been with Steward for just about 11 years. It'll be 11 years in May. The firm's just over 11 years old. My joke is when I got here, we had 3 advisors back then. I brought 2 with me, and we doubled the firm that day. And we've been working on doing that ever since. Prior to that, I got my start in the business at Merrill Lynch as an advisor, Albany, New York, 1993. First job out of school, I went to hired me, but somebody did, and it worked. And I went to Smith Barney about 10 years later. And of course, that's where we ended up meeting. And that move brought me from New York down to the DC market, where I was assistant manager, branch manager, and then ran a number of branches, sort of like a mini complex in that area. So that brought me up to 2013. Steward was in formation, and to me it was an idea that we saw the space moving from the wirehouse and regional setting to more of an RIA and independent structure, and I think we just knew that's where the puck was moving, and we wanted to get ahead of that.
Yeah, and I'm gonna come back to that for a second, because I think that was where the puck was heading, but maybe not what we thought back then with where it is today.
That's true.
Yeah, so Frank, why don't you give us a little bit of your background and when you came to Steward?
Sure, thanks. So I've been at Steward for just about 2 years now. Joined from Merrill Lynch, where it was for about 7 years or so. I'm running traditional investment products, and before that, I had 18 years at Smith Barney, Citigroup, Morgan Stanley. So I've got the Smith Barney heritage, the folks on stage. But I was really excited to join Steward. Having to spend 25 plus years, at the wirehouse and Steward, and go to a place where we're growing instead of shrinking. And a place where we can, accomplish more things for advisors and clients, which was definitely not the experience that for the last few years of my lifetime.
So thank you. So I want to talk about this one point, right? Because you talk about where the puck was going.
Yeah.
Because back, when the firm started, independence, as we know it today, wasn't really what we knew then, right? And so the model that you guys started to build was like, imagine what it was like with Smith Barney back in the day, right? There's a common theme, right? All the great leaders and all the great business folks that I come across, we all at some point spent time at Smith Barney, right? So talk about why that model at the time really still resonates today, because it's a W-2 model, right? So we're building out a W-2 model, and it still is a W-2 model. And in this world of sort of fleet independence, right? Tell me why that's not really right for everybody, and why you guys have honed in on that.
Yeah, it's a great question, and it really gets to the heart of who we are as an organization, which is, when we started Steward, we saw it as a bridge to independence, right? And this movement to being a 1099 and doing everything on your own, that is sometimes a bridge too far for some people. A lot of people don't get in the business to run the business. They get in the business, they have that entrepreneurial spirit, they want to build their client base, service their client base. What they want is a fair deal. And I think something that's a little bit more simplistic. So when we started with Steward, what we really focused on were those advisors that were maybe more of a delegator mentality, right? They didn't want to do all the stuff that came with it, but what they wanted to know is that they own their book of business, the one that they built and spent their career developing. They wanted to know that they had some control over pricing decision, and they also wanted autonomy in how they could service their client. And so one of the things that we did at Steward early on was we demystified and simplified the comp plan. We've always had the approach that, hey, as long as it's suitable and in the guardrails and what's right for the client, we're not going to pay you differently, whether it's an advisory, a discretionary account, and we don't hold anything back as far as the comp structure goes. So at other firms I've been to, it's called level the playing field. That just means they're taking more from you. So at Steward, we just have a clean pass through on what we do from a compensation perspective. And advisors do control that relationship, at least in the traditional W-2 model. I'm sure we'll talk about M&A later. That's a little bit different story. But that's been at the front and center of everything. The other thing advisors said they wanted, and actually the reason I left Morgan Stanley when I did is I called it being sick and tired of working for a shareholder. So at Steward, we are the shareholder. Every single person that works in a full-time capacity at Steward Partners is an equity owner and has a stake in the business, and that creates a whole different experience, a very different cultural experience, and it's really been a big part of our growth. It's the hallmark of our story is the equity piece. And it's been a really big, I think, accelerating piece as we've grown, and that's created more value, truly creating wealth and opportunity for our partners that work with us.
So you're talking about growth, the organization, and Steward Partners has had a lot of growth. Several years ago, you all made a decision as a Raymond James financial services business, which is where you built the platform, to essentially not move off the Raymond James platform, but to use a different sleeve of the platform. We all know that. Everyone understands that. But you guys have recently, and I guess with the addition of Frank, sort of maybe this is sort of a Frank question, right? So in talking about where the puck is going, you guys now, I believe, are truly going where the puck is going. And so maybe Frank, talk about your experience so far, like why did you come to the organization? I mean, obviously the culture and all that other stuff, but in your position, right, as the chief product officer, right, basically what are your marching orders, and what have you done recently that makes what you think sort of Steward Partners a more unique offering today than it was, even 5 years ago?
Right. So a couple of things. One, I think we kind of touched on it. We are expanding our custodial footprint. So yes, we grew up in the Raymond James ecosystem, and we still have a tremendous amount of advisors and assets there. But we like to refer to it, our version of that is Raymond James Plus, because we take advantage of, a significant amount of the Raymond James platform, but as our own independent broker-dealer, there's a lot of additional things that we could do that kind of enhance the experience for the advisors at Steward on the Raymond James platform. But we also have relationships with Pershing, Schwab, and Fidelity. So when an advisor wants to come to Steward, we have the ability to look at their book of business, look at their model, and say, this could be the right custodian for you. Or in some cases, we have even small amounts of kind of cross-custodial business, depending on what an advisor needs to do to service a client. So just that kind of mindset of having a broad platform and the ability to try to think at the Steward level, like what can I provide to all Steward partners across all of those custodians, really ending. So whether it's building out a relationship with Case and implementing that across all four custodians, or trying to do something similar with a TAMP that we're in the midst of integrating with. Yeah, that's what gets me excited about being chief product officer here. What we can do on this platform.
Do you think that, and this is maybe both your questions, do you think that building out this platform, so Jeff, you and I were talking a little bit before about the average recruit that you're talking to today is significantly higher than it was before. And it wasn't that you were bringing on small recruits, because you really weren't, but the opportunities are much bigger today. Can you just touch on, is that because of product solutions? Like, why do you think that's the case? And how do you think products, alternatives, all of those things are adding to that?
Yeah, I think it's a couple answers behind that. I'd start with the fact that broadening out the platform creates more optionality for advisors, right? And I think that it's the landscape there is as competitive as it's ever been. And so you have to be competitive with alternatives. You have to be competitive with different solutions like structured product. We have some really high level experiences we can offer with insurance and estate planning, and also building out the fintech. So, and Frank can talk about that more as well, but as we grow forward, having more freedom and flexibility to meet our advisors where they are in servicing their clients, a really big deal. And we really pride ourselves on the optionality. So that is helping us attract, I think, more advisors at a higher level. Our average advisor today is about $1.2 million, $1.3 million in revenue and $170 million in assets, which I think probably sits up against anybody in the industry as well as you can. The other thing that's happened, and it really is adding to the explosive growth, is back in 2023, at the end of 23, we had a very important acquisition that occurred, and that was the acquisition of Freedom Street. Scott Danner and Val Rivera, who really lead the charge there. It wasn't just about acquiring the business, which was 20 some odd million and $3.5 billion, but it was also the talent and taking in a group that really had been working on and developing the M&A side of the business for a number of years. So what has essentially happened, we've gone from not having any M&A structure at all in 2023 to now it's becoming one of the fastest growing parts of the business. And what's relevant about that is essentially the average team or advisor we're in front of there probably is somewhere in a 3 to 4 to 5 million range. And they've just gotten to the point where maybe it's succession that is number one on their mind. Or it might be that breakaway team that left 10 years ago and finds that they're doing all the stuff that they didn't really like about in the business. And they're getting to that critical point or that intersection where they have to make deep investment to continue to drive and expand that to grow it, or look for a partner that can provide a solution, and that's what we've done. So everything we've done in building out the traditional W-2 model at Steward over the years, I think has led to a point where we can really take on and absorb this M&A business, and in a lot of ways, the M&A business kind of completes the life cycle of what we do from a deal perspective as well, which we can get into. But I think all of that really ties in really well to what Frank is doing, and that doesn't exist unless we can bring on a Schwab and Fidelity to platform to capture the opportunity in those markets.
So that's interesting. As you're talking about that, one of the things that I've sort of been vocal about, and I did a podcast with Tony Sirianni, who we've also known for a long time.
Yeah.
And one of the comments that I made, he was asking about like my predictions. I think that there's going to be a movement of 1099, I call it swimming upstream, 1099 advisors moving back to a W-2 model. Because if you go through the math, and we've gone through some of this math, right? The average 1099 advisor nets somewhere between 60 and 65%. And in your W-2 model, forget about transition money and all that stuff, right?
Yep.
You can get the right size producers to right around those numbers, right? Are you starting to see, there's a question in here, more than just a statement, I'm pontificating, because I do think that's happening because we're starting to see it. But are you starting to see that? Are you starting to get opportunities or at-bats with 1099 advisors that are going, hey, I was a practitioner before. I love working with my clients. This whole, what I call human capital issues, right? You're dealing with employees, and I love you all. I'm not saying that, but being that sort of the operator, being the, all of a sudden they're spending 60% of their day dealing with compliance and operations and not growing their business, right? Are you guys starting to see that more and more?
It's exactly what we're seeing, and what puts us in a very unique place is our structure, having the infrastructure that we have. You referenced us stepping away from Raymond James. They're still a tremendous partner. We have 38 billion on that platform, and it's a terrific relationship, and opening up some of the technology has helped us get better on that platform as well. But it was back in 22, we acquired our own introducing broker-dealer, and we've essentially grown our back office in that time frame from about 30 people to over 130. And what that does is it creates that infrastructure and experience to build the tech stack, to have people, 6 people deep on the product team, to beef up compliance and risk, to do all of those things operationally to help support the business as we're growing it. And that's exactly that intersection or the inflection point that I think a lot of these smaller RIAs are running up against, which is what got them here isn't going to get them there, and they need to make the spend, or they have to find a solution where maybe a tuck-in makes more sense. And I think from our perspective, M&A, I think everybody automatically assumes that's going to be just succession planning, and there's no doubt that's a big part of it, right? The average advisor age is 60 to 62 years old. G2 and G3 generation can't support the multiples that are being offered in that space. And then there's this other epidemic where there's more 80-year-olds in the business than there are 30-year-olds in the business. So you have a lot of different cross currents happening that's making it more and more challenging. Compliance hasn't gotten easier. HR and benefits haven't gotten cheaper. And at the end of the day, technology is moving really fast. So you need to be able to be nimble and have the capital to support it. It is hard to do for a small practice. So that has really been, I think, a beneficial part of where we are. And I guess the point I was referencing earlier was it's not all sell and leave, right, in the M&A space. Some of these folks are looking for a way to monetize, unload all of that so they can now focus on growing the business again. And I think that gets lost in the conversation. Mm-hmm. Now, not everybody's in a position to want to sell, and so we think that we can meet advisors exactly where they are. And in our W-2 model, we have a very competitive cash component built in. We have a very achievable back-end award that we provide advisors as well. And like I mentioned earlier, every partner, regardless of how you come to Steward, has equity ownership. But we've gone beyond that. We have growth awards that are in place after the back end of those recruiting deals kind of taper off. So we have growth awards based on revenue, and we always use a carrot, not a stick approach at Steward. 62% of our eligible advisors hit that award last year. And it's something that I think really helps drive them and keeps them connected to the company. We've added things like voluntary deferred comp plans. We have full benefits. We have catastrophic and advisor retirement succession planning built into Steward as well. So it's not just about everything that happens in the product platform area, but it's really taking care of our partners through the entire life cycle of their experience at Steward.
So you said, go ahead.
Down on what Jeff was saying, kind of about the benefits of our scale and kind of why that makes our platform attractive, particularly for someone coming from a classic 1099 kind of solo RIA type situation where we invested a tremendous amount of our resources into that back office, whether it's our operations main, large supervision team, all of those things that kind of help an individual advisor get out of their own way and just be able to focus on their business. Given how complex the industry as a whole has gotten, and we find that that's a huge benefit when they can take the phone and talk to our chief risk officer, our chief compliance officer, and get the immediate answer from very business focused before they go.
And they're all equity owners as well. And so what
Right.
what happens is you actually have alignment across the organization.
Yeah, so that gets into my next question for Frank. You talk about growth. You made a couple of comments about growth awards. This all about growth, right?
Yeah.
I know you've been here for 2 years now, but how do you view your role when you're bringing on a new advisor that's coming to the organization, right? That maybe has never done alternatives, right? They've maybe done structured notes or whatever, but they never really gotten into alternatives. Is that your responsibility to sort of help teach them and educate them? And because this goes into sort of like what attracts advisors to Steward Partners and then what keeps them there, right? And I would imagine their ability for your ability to help them grow by educating them must play a role.
Definitely. So it's the mix of building out the platform and building out the platform in a way that we're responsive to our advisors, right? We get, calls every day about, a new product or a new fintech solution that someone wants to take a look at. And, that's why my team's here. We'll take a look at it to see if it's something that makes sense for the partnership. But and yes, my team spends a lot of time educated. Advisors are working directly with advisors. You mentioned structured notes. We have someone on my team that spends a tremendous amount of time working with individual advisors, building custom structured notes, which we then take and try to find other advisors throughout the firm that might want to benefit from that work. But one of the kind of secret weapons, again, plays back into this concept that we are a pre-partnership. Everyone is an equity shareholder. We find the best way to educate advisors is through other advisors. So we spend tremendous amount of time with our advisors that do a lot of alts, working with advisors and teams that want to learn how to do that. Same thing for structured notes and for annuities. And because the makeup of the equity situation, everyone's success helps the firm as a whole. So there's none of that kind of intra-advisor competition that everyone wants to see everyone's succeed. And they works really hard to get our other partners that.
Awesome. So I want to ask you two questions in the interest of time here. One is about really about the industry as a whole and some of the stuff that we see going on lately, and I don't think it's over. That's a consolidation. And then the second one is really going to be your position as it relates to private equity, right? Sort of friend or foe kind of thing, right? And so the first question, which is really about consolidation in our space, right? Obviously, LPL makes another acquisition and of Commonwealth, and kudos to LPL for doing that. I think it's going to maybe create a issue. Maybe they're sort of creating their own animal, right? I think it's going to rear its ugly head sooner than later. But your perspective on the industry and consolidation, how do you see that? Is it good or bad for financial advisors? What are your concerns when you think about? We've both been in this a long time, right? When you think about where we are and what's coming, does it worry you?
It doesn't worry me. I think all the things that we're building support our level of preparedness and making sure we have a platform that works for advisors and also fostering next generation growth as well. I think they're critical components. I don't think this is slowing down at all. And I think the demographics just tell the story. Like we talked about earlier, the average advisor is somewhere between 60, 62. The capital it requires to acquire a business is different than it used to be, and that probably leads into the whole PE conversation. Years ago when you and I started in the business, when somebody retired, I'm not even sure there was a deal on the table for that. And then it became this
like a
traditional
buyout, like an earnout, hey, we'll give you a split for the next 5 years.
Yeah, and that's really what it was, a 50-50 split for 5 years. That's as good as it gets. And that's certainly not the case today. And I think, listen, as long as the average multiple out there for a business being acquired, I think is somewhere 6 at the low end, maybe up to 12 at the high end. Some firms are paying more than that. We fit somewhere in the middle to the lower end of that because we think we offer an awful lot of value around it, and that makes up for a lot of it, plus we're solving problems. That being said, as long as firms can take that at an enterprise level and get a multiple of 20, 22, Commonwealth just got a pretty good multiple, or plus, I think you're going to continue to see that happen. And so I think for firms like Steward Partners, we're building this to get through that next phase and be one of those leaders in the space. That's why the infrastructure build is so important. That's why having scale, capital, the team that we've built around it really resonates in what we're doing. We had a vision 10 years ago to be a $10 billion asset firm with $100 million in revenue. We're eclipsed 42 billion on our way to 45 by mid-year this year. Our revenue run rates more than triple, almost quadruple what we expected. And we see a clear path to being able to double and triple that business in the next 3 to 7 years. So the consolidation's there, but you need scale, you need capital, you need infrastructure, and you need a team that can execute. And it's hard to find all of that.
Yeah, so let's talk about that right for the next few minutes here. How do you view, and you've gone through, 2 PE partners, right? And tell us maybe a little bit about that, not that experience, but, and again, Frank, you can weigh in. How do you view PE money coming into our space as a positive thing, and how has it been positive for you all over the last, I'm not sure exactly when I think Sinosure was first, right?
Sinosure was first, and
right.
So 2019.
The Pritzker family came in afterwards, right?
Yep, Sinosure came in 2019. It's a family office, so a little bit different than a PE firm. And the same with the Pritzker organization, also a family office. They came in 2021. So collectively, our 2 family office partners own about 25% of the business. Again, unique about Steward, 75% of the firm is employee owned.
Go back for a second on when you say it's a family office versus private equity, and maybe I'm not, when I say PE, I'm just looking at sort of outside money, whether it's private investment, family offices, right? But in your mind, what is the difference between a PE firm coming in and buying a piece versus a family office coming in and buying a piece?
And I'm not saying one's better or worse than the other, but it's long-term capital versus what might have a 5 to 7 year life and turn inside that fund, right? Most PE shops are using capital for whatever fund vintage they're bringing out at that moment, and typically there's a shot clock or a lifeline on that. So not a bad thing, but it is a little bit different, and I think the key for us, it's been a terrific relationship. They really don't run anything in the day-to-day at Steward, but they offer a lot of value and guidance as we think about how to grow the firm going forward. Governance is a big part of that as well. So between our board and our family office partners, we have both of those covered in spades and at very high level. I mean, if you look at our board of directors and the people that are part of the family office organization, I mean, they're high quality people. I think you got to find the right fit, and that's been really important to us. So everything we've done from that perspective has been tremendously additive. We feel very aligned in that relationship, and we're still running and driving our vision, but we have some really terrific partners on the sidelines, helping give some advice and guidance where we need it.
Yeah, in areas where maybe you haven't experienced that problem before, and they have. There's a lot of value there.
And I think when you look at some of the PE firms out there, a lot of what's happening, we talked about how you have to build scale and systems and infrastructure. So I think if you're going down that path, you want to make sure you find a partner that's going to be able to add resources to what you're doing. And I think it's really that resource play, which is, hey, if we have a vision to get to 150 billion in 7 years, if we find a partner out there, we want to make sure that that partner has resources that can help us get there in 4 or 5.
Right, got it. So, last question for Frank. As a guy with a lot of experience in the business, although you look like you're handling it pretty well because you don't look as tired as I do. But when you look at the industry as a whole, and all the news and the markets, we see what's going on right now. When you're talking to advisors, right? Because obviously, as a product, you're probably having a lot of conversation with advisors. What should advisors be focusing on right now, and given this market, given what's going on in the industry? What are the types of conversations you're having with advisors about what they should be focused on / concerned with and addressing?
That's to keep their clients engaged and not to panic through all of this. So we've done, my team has led a number of kind of ad hoc events over the last couple of weeks, and I think one of the best ones was a suggestion for one of our advisors who basically sent the management to an email on a Sunday night and said, hey, we would love the opportunity to get together a group of our advisors to have kind of a panel. This was Monday, a week ago Monday, to just talk about, what everyone's kind of experiencing on the front lines. And we kind of made that happen by that Monday, and we had 5 advisors from across the firm, different business models, different client sets, and it was one of the most engaging events that we've had. And I think that getting advisors talking to each other is one of the best things that we could do as a management team. And then from a product set, it's making sure that we have an evergreen product platform, that we're not kind of chasing market conditions, that we already have the full breadth of products available, full breadth of solutions available, so that we don't have to be kind of panic that we don't have the right investment solutions or options for our advisors to use for their clients when something happens dramatic in the market like it did.
Awesome. So last piece of this, right? If you're a multi-million-dollar advisor and you're listening to this, right, why should they pick up the phone, call me, of course, right? 856-316-4651. Or you can email Stacy at Stacy with an E at eliteconsultingpartners.com, as we say on our podcast. So she's not here, so I'm giving her some props. But you're a $2 million advisor, you're thinking about making a move. What's the 1 or 2 key things that they should be thinking about? Why I want to pick up the phone and talk to this guy, Jeff, at Steward Partners?
Yeah, I think it goes back to what's the purpose? What are you trying to achieve and accomplish? And I think for a lot of the advisors that we're speaking to, what they're looking for is ownership, right? They're looking to be part of something bigger. They're looking to bring that entrepreneurial spirit back to the business that they started years ago. And they're looking to be unencumbered. And that might be doing less of the stuff that they had to do before if they're in that 1099 or independent space. It's really about having a platform where they can grow their business, be fully supported. When we started Steward, it was the idea of having a fully supported independent business and partnership. And that, regardless of all the changes that have happened, has stayed very true to Steward. And I would also say, from a wealth building perspective, the equity piece is really significant. In the very beginning, 11 years ago, people would talk to us about the equity, and they still had the scars from 08 and 09 when their big firms imploded and their equity went to zero. I have some of those scars too.
Yeah, we all do.
But, I would say, people that joined 10 years ago, their equity has more value than the entire deal. And being part of something bigger, Frank hit on all of that. It expands beyond the numbers. It's cultural, it's real. And, if that's what you're thinking, come on home to Steward.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much. We appreciate it. For those that are listening in the room, we appreciate it. For those that are online, thanks for listening. Don't forget to check us out on my Instagram account, which is franklarosa.elite. I think we're something close to 270,000 followers right now, which is awesome. 300 is the next number. Jeff, Frank, thanks a lot. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Awesome. Very much. Thanks a lot.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks for listening to Advisor Talk with Frank LaRosa. If you're looking for more advice or solutions on any topics in the financial services industry, or you just want to subscribe to our podcast, head on over to eliteconsultingpartners.com/podcasts.